The champagne glass shattered against marble as Susan watched the Mafia wife's crimson lips curl into a vicious smile. The invitation extended like a poisoned apple. Come to the party, little waitress. Show everyone what you really are. But when Susan stepped through those golden doors 3 nights later, draped in midnight silk that cost more than the woman's yearly jewelry budget, every eye turned, every whisper died, and across the room, Kang Min-ho, Seoul's most feared underworld king, felt something crack open inside his chest, something dark and hungry and utterly inescapable as their eyes met and the world tilted on its axis. Welcome to Afro-Korean romance, where love has no borders. If you believe in love, please like, comment, share and subscribe for more Afro-Korean romance stories. The restaurant's kitchen smelled of grease and desperation. Susan wiped sweat from her brow, her curvy figure moving efficiently between stations as orders piled up. 5 years in Seoul and she still felt like an outsider, her dark skin, her accent, her curves that didn't fit Korean beauty standards. But she worked hard, saved everyone and ignored the stares. That afternoon, Mrs. Choi swept in like a perfumed storm. The woman's designer heels clicked against tile as she approached Susan with a smile too sharp to be kind. You, the African girl. Susan straightened, chin high. How can I help you? My husband's hosting a party Saturday night, very exclusive. Mrs. Choi's eyes traveled over Susan's uniform with disdain. I need extra servers, you'll do. Something cold slithered down Susan's spine. She recognized cruelty disguised as opportunity. I'm not available. Triple your usual rate. Mrs. Choi placed a business card on the counter. Unless you're too proud to take money from people like us. The other kitchen staff had gone silent, watching. Susan felt the familiar burn of humiliation, the trap closing around her. If she refused, she'd look ungrateful. If she accepted, she'd be walking into something designed to break her. She picked up the card. What time? Mrs. Choi's smile widened. 8 o'clock, and Susan, dress appropriately. We wouldn't want you to embarrass yourself. Later that night, Susan sat in her tiny apartment, staring at the address on the card. The Choi estate. She'd heard whispers. Mr. Choi ran one of Seoul's most powerful criminal organizations, legitimate businesses fronting for darker operations. His wife collected humiliations like other women collected handbags. Susan's phone buzzed. Her best friend Mina's message glowed on the screen. Don't go, it's a setup. She knew that, but something stubborn and fierce had awakened in her chest. If Mrs. Choi wanted to humiliate her, Susan would show up looking so stunning that every insult would die in that woman's throat. The next morning, Susan called in a favor. Her friend who worked at a luxury boutique owed her from last year. I need something that costs more than a car, Susan said. Just for one night. 3 hours later, she stood before a mirror in a private fitting room, barely recognizing herself. The dress was midnight blue silk that seemed to absorb light, custom designed by a Korean fashion house for a celebrity who'd never worn it. It hugged every curve of her body like water, the neckline elegant, the back daringly low. Diamonds glittered at her throat, costume jewelry that looked real under the right light. You look like royalty, Mina breathed. Susan's reflection showed a woman transformed. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant updo, her makeup flawless, her curves celebrated rather than hidden. For the first time in years, she felt beautiful in a city that had tried to make her feel invisible. Let's give them something to stare at, she murmured. Saturday evening arrived too quickly. Susan's hands trembled slightly as she stepped out of the taxi, the Choi estate looming before her like a cathedral of wealth. Music drifted from inside, along with laughter and the clink of crystal. She took a breath, smoothed the silk over her hips and walked through the golden doors. The effect was immediate. Conversations stuttered to silence. Heads turned. A woman gasped. Susan kept her chin high, her stride confident, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. Mrs. Choi stood near the bar, her face draining of color as she took in Susan's appearance. The expensive dress, the jewels, the transformation. This wasn't the humiliated waitress she'd expected. This was competition. But Susan barely noticed, because across the crowded room, past the Seoul elite in their designer clothes and false smiles, a man watched her with an intensity that stole her breath. Kang Min-ho. Everyone in Seoul knew the name, even if they'd never seen his face. The Dragon of Gangnam, the man who controlled half the city's underground with an iron fist wrapped in Italian suits. He stood near the windows, surrounded by bodyguards who looked like they could break concrete with their bare hands. and he was staring at Susan like she'd set his world on fire. Min-ho had attended this party as a favor to Choi, a business associate who occasionally proved useful. He'd planned to stay 30 minutes, make an appearance, then return to more important matters. His empire didn't run itself. Then she walked in. The woman in the blue dress moved through the crowd like music made flesh, her curves absolutely devastating in silk that should be illegal, her dark skin glowing against the fabric. She was beautiful in a way that made his chest tight, his hands curl into fists, his carefully controlled world tilt sideways. He watched her navigate the stairs and whispers with a grace that spoke of strength, of battles fought and survived. When she lifted her chin in defiance, something primitive and possessive roared to life inside him. Mine. The thought was insane. He didn't know her name, didn't know anything except that he needed to breathe the same air, hear her voice, learn what made her smile like that, brief and devastating when someone offered her champagne. Who is she? He asked quietly. His right-hand man Yoon materialized at his elbow. Susan works at a restaurant downtown. Mrs. Choi invited her as entertainment. Min-ho's jaw clenched. He recognized the setup, the cruelty of it. Mrs. Choi had a reputation for these games, inviting women she considered beneath her just to watch them squirm. But this woman, Susan, wasn't squirming. She was conquering. Find out everything, he ordered. Where she lives, where she works, who her friends are, everything. Yoon nodded and disappeared. Min-ho continued watching, unable to look away as Susan accepted a glass of champagne, as she smiled politely at some banker's boring story, as she existed in his world like a flame in darkness. Then Choi's son approached her, drunk and handsy, and Min-ho felt rage explode through his veins. Susan tried to step back as the younger Choi invaded her space, his breath reeking of whiskey, his hand reaching for her waist. You're even prettier up close, he slurred. Why don't we go somewhere more private? No, thank you. She kept her voice steady but her skin crawled. Around them, people watched with interest, waiting to see the show. His hand landed on her hip anyway. Come on, don't be. A vice-like grip seized Choi's wrist, yanking it away. Susan looked up into the coldest eyes she'd ever seen, dark, furious, lethal. The man from across the room now stood between her and Choi like a wall of controlled violence. Touch her again, Kang Min-ho said softly, and I'll break every bone in your hand, slowly. The room went silent. Choi paled, stepping back, mumbling apologies. Min-ho didn't look at him, his attention fixed on Susan with an intensity that made her pulse race. Are you all right? His voice was different now, gentle, concerned, completely at odds with the threat he'd just delivered. Susan nodded, not trusting her voice. Up close he was devastating. Sharp cheekbones, strong jaw, lips that looked cruel until they softened slightly as he studied her face. Would you like to leave? He asked. Yes. He offered his arm like they were in some period drama. Susan hesitated, then placed her hand on his sleeve, feeling hard muscle beneath expensive fabric. He led her through the crowd, which parted like the Red Sea, everyone watching the Dragon of Gangnam escort an unknown woman toward the exit. Mrs. Choi's expression was murderous. Outside, the night air was cool against Susan's heated skin. Min-ho's car waited, a sleek black sedan with tinted windows. He opened the door himself, hand gentle at the small of her back. I can take a taxi, Susan said, even as her body betrayed her, leaning slightly into his touch. You could, he agreed, but you won't. The certainty in his voice should have annoyed her. Instead, it sent heat spiraling through her stomach. She slid into the car and he followed. The door closing them into intimate darkness. Where do you live? She gave him the address of her apartment, then immediately regretted it. What was she doing, getting into a car with Seoul's most dangerous man? But as the car pulled away from the estate, Min-ho made no move to touch her. He simply watched her with that unnerving intensity, like he was memorizing every detail. The dress, he said finally, it's stunning on you. Thank you, Susan smoothed the silk self-consciously. I borrowed it. Why did you come tonight? You knew it was a trap. She met his gaze, surprised by his perception. Because I'm tired of people like Mrs. Choi thinking they can make me feel small. Something flickered in his eyes, approval maybe or recognition. You're magnificent. The word hung between them heavy with meaning. Susan's breath caught. This man, this dangerous, powerful man, looked at her like she was precious, like she mattered. I don't even know you, she whispered. Then let me remedy that. He leaned forward slightly, close enough that she could smell his cologne, cedar and smoke and something darker. I'm Kang Min-ho, and from this moment forward, Susan, you're under my protection. The following morning, Susan woke convinced the previous night had been a fever dream, but when she checked her phone, there were 3 missed calls from a number she didn't recognize and a text. Good morning. Did you sleep well? MH. Her hand trembled. This was insane. Men like Kang Min-ho didn't pursue women like her. He probably had a dozen girlfriends, all tall and willowy and Korean. She was still staring at the message when someone knocked on her door. Susan opened it to find a delivery person, holding an enormous bouquet of white roses, and a box from the boutique where she'd borrowed the dress. Miss Susan, delivery for you. In a daze she accepted both. The card attached to the roses read, you shouldn't have to borrow beauty, it should be yours. MH. Inside the box was the blue dress, along with the diamond necklace, which she now realized with shock was real, and a note, I bought them, they belong on you. Susan sank onto her couch, staring at thousands of dollars worth of clothing and jewels. This was too much, too fast, too overwhelming. Her phone rang, the same unknown number. She answered, hello. Did you receive my gifts? Min-ho's voice was smooth, satisfied. I can't accept these, they're too expensive. They're already yours, I don't take returns. A pause, have dinner with me tonight. Mr. Kang. Min-ho, she corrected, his name strange and intimate on her tongue. I don't think this is a good idea, we're from different worlds. Then it's fortunate I'm excellent at bridge building. His tone softened. One dinner, Susan, if you hate it I'll never bother you again. She closed her eyes, knowing she should refuse, knowing this path led to complications she couldn't afford. But the memory of how he'd looked at her, how he'd protected her without hesitation, how he'd made her feel seen for the first time in years. One dinner, she heard herself say. His satisfaction radiated through the phone. I'll pick you up at 7. That evening, Susan changed outfits 4 times before settling on a simple black dress that hugged her curves. She told herself this was just dinner, nothing more. She'd satisfy her curiosity about Seoul's most notorious crime boss, then politely decline any further contact. The lies we tell ourselves, her reflection seemed to mock. At precisely 7, Min-ho arrived. He traded his suit for dark slacks and a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled to reveal forearms that made Susan's mouth go dry. He looked younger like this, less intimidating, though his eyes still held that predatory focus. You look beautiful, he said simply. Thank you, she grabbed her purse, trying to ignore how her heart raced at his nearness. Where are we going? Somewhere private. The somewhere turned out to be a rooftop restaurant she'd never have been able to afford, the entire space reserved for just them. Seoul glittered below like scattered diamonds, the night air warm and fragrant. Min-ho held her chair, his fingers brushing her bare shoulder and sending electricity racing across her skin. Then he sat across from her, his attention absolute. Tell me about yourself, he said. Everything. That's a big question. I have all night. So she told him. About growing up in America, studying abroad in Korea, falling in love with Seoul despite its challenges, working multiple jobs to stay afloat, the loneliness of being foreign in a place that didn't always want to see her. Min-ho listened like her words were sacred texts, his expression darkening when she mentioned discrimination, softening when she described her dreams of opening her own restaurant someday. You will, he said with absolute certainty. I'll make sure of it. You don't have to. I want to. He reached across the table, his hand engulfing hers, warm and solid. I want to give you everything you've ever wanted, Susan, everything you've been denied. The intensity in his gaze stole her breath. Why, you don't even know me. I know enough. His thumb stroked across her knuckles, the simple touch igniting fire beneath her skin. I know you're brave and proud and beautiful. I know you make my world make sense for the first time in years. I know that when I saw you walk into that party, something in me recognized something in you. Min-ho's. I'm not a good man, he continued, his voice dropping. I've done things that would horrify you. I've built an empire on violence and fear. But with you, I want to be better. I want to be the man who deserves to stand beside you. Susan's eyes burned. No one had ever spoken to her like this, like she was worth reshaping the world for. This is crazy. We've known each other less than 24 hours. Then give me 24 more, and 24 after that. His grip tightened slightly, possessive. I'm not letting you go, Susan, not now that I've found you. The statement should have scared her. Instead, it sent a thrill through her entire body, a dangerous excitement that tasted like inevitability. They talked through dinner, through dessert, through the hours until Seoul's lights began to dim. Min-ho told her about his childhood in the slums, clawing his way to power, building his organization with brutal efficiency. He didn't hide the darkness, but he also showed her glimpses of the man beneath, fiercely loyal to those he cared for, protective to the point of violence, capable of surprising tenderness. I should go, Susan said finally, though she didn't want to. It's late. Min-ho stood, helping her up, his hand lingering at her waist. Let me take you home. In the car, the tension between them was thick enough to taste. Susan was hyper-aware of him beside her, his heat, his scent, the controlled power in his body. When his hand settled on her thigh, she didn't push it away. Susan, her name was a growl, tell me to stop. She couldn't. She turned to him and his control shattered. Min-ho kissed her like a man possessed, his mouth claiming hers with a hunger that made her gasp. Susan grabbed his shoulders, pulling him closer, drowning in sensation. He tasted like whiskey and sin, his hands tangling in her hair, tilting her head to deepen the kiss. You're mine, he breathed against her lips. Say it. This is insane. Say it. Yours, she whispered and felt him shudder. They barely made it to her apartment. Min-ho pressed her against her door, his body hard against her soft curves, his lips tracing fire down her throat. Susan fumbled with her keys, her hands shaking, her entire body burning. Inside, darkness, his hands on her zipper sliding the dress down, her fingers on his buttons baring skin that was all hard muscle and heat. They moved together toward her bedroom, leaving a trail of expensive clothing, the world narrowing to just touch and breath and desperate need. He laid her on the bed like she was made of glass, his eyes dark with desire and something deeper, something that looked like reverence. Beautiful, he murmured, his hands mapping her curves, learning every inch. So damn beautiful. Susan pulled him down, past words, past thought, into a connection that felt like coming home and falling off a cliff simultaneously. Min-ho worshipped her body with a passion that left her gasping, trembling, completely undone. And when they finally came together, moving as one, it felt less like physical pleasure and more like two souls recognizing each other. This is dangerous, some distant part of her mind warned. You're going to get hurt. But as Min-ho held her afterward, his arms iron bands of safety, his lips pressing soft kisses to her temple, Susan couldn't bring herself to care. Stay, she whispered. Always, he promised. Susan woke alone. Dawn light filtered through her curtains, illuminating the empty space beside her. Min-ho's scent lingered on her sheets, but the man himself was gone. No note, no message, just the phantom warmth where his body had been. Reality crashed over her like ice water. Of course he'd left. What had she expected? Men like him didn't stay. They took what they wanted and disappeared. She'd been such a fool. Susan dragged herself to the shower, scrubbing away the evidence of last night, trying to scrub away the ache in her chest. She'd known better. She'd known this was impossible, but she'd let herself hope anyway, and now she was paying the price. By the time she finished, rage had replaced hurt. How dare he? How dare he say those things, make those promises, then vanish like she was nothing? Her phone buzzed. A message from the unknown number. Had to handle something urgent. See you tonight. MH. Susan stared at it, torn between relief and fury. He thought he could just order her around, expect her to be available whenever he had time. She typed back, I'm busy. His response was immediate, cancel. Her fingers flew, no. A pause, longer this time, then Susan. Just her name, but loaded with warning. She could picture his expression, that dangerous focus, the dark promise in his eyes. She turned off her phone. The next few days, Susan threw herself into work, ignoring the flood of messages and missed calls. Flowers arrived at the restaurant, massive arrangements that her co-workers cooed over while she tossed the cards unread. A luxury car appeared outside her apartment. She took the bus instead. She was not some toy for a crime boss to play with when convenient. But on the fourth night, Min-ho was waiting in her apartment when she got home. Susan froze in the doorway, her heart hammering. He sat on her couch like he owned it, still in his suit, tie loosened, looking simultaneously exhausted and furious. "How did you get in here?" "I own the building." His voice was flat, dangerous. "Why are you ignoring me?" "Because you left," the words exploded out of her. "You slept with me and disappeared without a word." He stood, crossing to her in 3 strides, backing her against the door. "I had an emergency. One of my men was dying. I had to." He stopped, jaw clenching. "I should have woken you. I should have explained. But I didn't want to drag you into that world." "So you just vanished." "It was a mistake." His hands framed her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "But ignoring me, refusing my calls, that stops now." "You don't get to give me orders." "I do when you're mine." His thumb brushed her lower lip. "You said it, Susan. You said you were mine. Did you mean it, or was it just something you said in the moment?" She wanted to lie to protect herself, but under that intense gaze she couldn't. "I meant it." "Then trust me." He leaned in, his forehead against hers. "I'm not good at this, at relationships, at explaining my feelings. I'm used to taking what I want and not apologizing, but with you, I want to try, I want to be better." Susan's resistance crumbled. She fisted her hands in his shirt, pulling him closer. "If you disappear again without explanation, I'm done." "Noted." He kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. "Come home with me, stay with me, let me show you what you mean to me." "I have work tomorrow." "Call in sick." "Min-ho's." "Please," the word sounded foreign in his mouth like he rarely used it. "Please, Susan, I need you." She should refuse. She should maintain boundaries, protect her heart. Instead, she found herself nodding, following him to his car, letting him take her to his penthouse in the sky. His home was exactly what she'd expected: minimalist, expensive, cold. Until they crossed the threshold and Min-ho transformed into someone softer, someone who wanted to feed her, show her his space, pull her into his arms on the couch and just hold her while they watched the city lights. "I've never brought anyone here," he admitted. "This is my sanctuary." "Why me?" He turned her in his arms, his expression serious. "Because you're different, because you challenge me, because when I'm with you I remember there's more to life than power and control and fear." His lips brushed her forehead. "Because I'm falling in love with you and it terrifies me." Susan's breath caught. "Min-ho." "You don't have to say it back, but I needed you to know." She kissed him instead of answering, pouring every confused emotion into the press of her lips against his. And when they made love this time, in his massive bed with Seoul spread out below them, it felt like a vow. Dangerous, impossible, but undeniably real. The following morning, Susan woke wrapped in Egyptian cotton and Min-ho's arms. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, and for a moment she let herself believe in fairy tales. Then reality intruded, her phone buzzing with messages from worried co-workers, the distance between her tiny apartment and this palatial penthouse, the impossible gap between their worlds. Min-ho stirred, pressing a kiss to her shoulder. "Stay today." "I have to work." "I'll buy the restaurant, you can take the day off." She turned to face him, finding his expression serious. "You can't just buy my problems away." "Watch me," but he smiled, softening the arrogance. "At least let me drive you." They compromised. He'd drop her off a block away, maintaining the illusion that her life was still normal. In the car, his hand stayed possessively on her thigh, his thumb drawing circles that made concentration impossible. "Dinner tonight," he said. It wasn't a question. "Okays. I want you to move in with me." Susan's head whipped around. "What?" "Your apartment isn't safe. The neighborhood, the building, I don't like you there alone." His jaw tightened. "Move in, let me take care of you." "Min-ho, we've known each other a week." 8 days, his eyes met hers intense. 8 days and I've never been more certain of anything. You belong with me, Susan, in my home, in my bed, in my life. "This is crazy." "Then be crazy with me." He brought her hand to his lips. "Think about it, please." At the restaurant, Susan couldn't think about anything else. Move in with him, it was insane, reckless, everything her practical side screamed against. But her heart whispered yes. She was still distracted when Mrs. Choi walked in at lunch, her expression venomous. Susan's stomach dropped as the woman approached the counter, other customers watching with interest. So it's true, Mrs. Choi said loudly. You're sleeping with Kang Min-ho. The restaurant went silent. Susan lifted her chin. That's none of your business. You think he loves you? You're a novelty, sweetheart, something exotic to play with until he gets bored. She leaned closer, voice dropping to a hiss. He'll ruin you and throw you away like garbage. That's what men like him do. Each word was designed to wound, to plant seeds of doubt. And they worked, because wasn't that what Susan feared? That she was temporary, disposable, just another conquest. You should leave, Susan said quietly. The truth hurts, doesn't it? Mrs. Choi smiled. When he's done with you, don't come crawling back here. You made your choice. She left in a cloud of expensive perfume. Susan's hands shook as she returned to work, her co-workers whispering the damage done. That evening when Min-ho picked her up, he took one look at her face and his expression went deadly. What happened? Nothing. Susan, he cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. Tell me. So she did, watched his fury build with each word, his control fracturing. By the end, his hands were fists, his voice ice. She came to your workplace, harassed you publicly. Min-ho, don't. She threatened what's mine, his eyes blazed. No one touches you, no one speaks to you like that, no one. What are you going to do? He kissed her hard, possessive. Handle it, come on. They went to his penthouse, but Min-ho spent the evening on the phone, speaking in rapid Korean that Susan only partially understood. She caught words like bankrupt and destroy and example, and realized with a chill that he was systematically dismantling Mrs. Choi's world. Stop, she said, finally touching his arm. This isn't necessary. It absolutely is. He pulled her into his lap, arms banding around her waist. You're mine to protect, mine to defend. Anyone who hurts you answers to me. The possessiveness should have scared her. Instead, it made her feel cherished, safe, like she mattered enough to fight for. I don't want you to become a monster because of me. Too late, his lips brushed her temple. I became a monster the moment I decided you were mine. Now I'm just deciding how much destruction to rain down on anyone who threatens you. Susan twisted to face him fully. Is this what it means to be with you? Constant warfare? No, his expression softened. It means being protected, absolutely. It means never facing your battles alone. It means I will burn this city to ash before I let anyone harm you. He kissed her slowly, deeply. It means you're mine and I'm yours and nothing else matters. She surrendered to the kiss, to him, to the impossible situation she'd found herself in. And later, in his bed, when he made love to her with a tenderness that contradicted his earlier fury, Susan made her decision. I'll move in, she whispered against his chest. She felt him still, then his arms tightened. You mean it? I'm terrified, this is happening so fast, but yes, I'll move in with you. His kiss was answer enough. A week later, Susan's belongings filled a corner of Min-ho's massive closet, a pathetic showing compared to his extensive wardrobe. But he'd made space for her things with a care that made her throat tight, and he'd hired movers to handle everything while insisting she keep her furniture in storage, just in case. Just in case he got bored, just in case this ended. Susan tried not to think about it. Living with Min-ho was an education in contradictions. He was ruthless in business, terrifying to his enemies, but with her he was soft. He cooked breakfast wearing nothing but pajama pants, his hands gentle as he braided her hair, his smile quick and genuine. He was also insufferably possessive. When Susan mentioned a male regular at the restaurant who'd been friendly, Min-ho's expression went dark. How friendly? Normal friendly, he tips well. I don't like it. Min-ho, he's 70 years old. Still don't like it. She laughed, but the next day, the elderly man had mysteriously started frequenting a different restaurant. Susan confronted Min-ho that evening. Did you pay off Mr. Kim to stop coming to my workplace? Min-ho didn't even look guilty. Yes. He was harmless. He looked at you, as if that explained everything. He pulled her into his arms despite her half-hearted resistance. I know I'm being irrational. I know you're not mine to control. But Susan, the thought of any man looking at you, wanting you, even thinking about you, it makes me violent. That's not healthy. I never claimed to be healthy. His lips found her neck. I'm obsessed with you, addicted to you, you're in my blood and I don't want a cure. The intensity should have sent her running. Instead, it ignited something equally fierce inside her. "You're insane." "About you, absolutely." He kissed her until she forgot why she'd been angry, until she was clinging to him, breathless and aching. But that night, while Min-ho slept beside her, Susan stared at the ceiling and wondered if Mrs. Choi had been right. Was this sustainable, or was she just delaying the inevitable heartbreak? 3 weeks into living together, Susan met Min-ho's inner circle. Yoon, his right-hand man, treated her with careful respect. The others, hard men with dangerous eyes, watched her like they couldn't quite figure out why their boss had gone soft. "She's pretty," one muttered in Korean, assuming she couldn't understand. "She's perfect," Min-ho corrected in the same language, his arm around Susan's waist. "And if any of you disrespect her, I'll feed you to the Han River. Understood?" Unanimous nods. Susan hid her smile. Later, Yoon pulled her aside. "He's different with you, happier. We've never seen him like this." "Is that good or bad?" "Good, but it also makes him vulnerable." Yoon's expression was serious. "There are people who would use that against him, against you. Be careful, Susan." The warning chilled her. She'd been so caught up in the romance, the intensity, that she'd forgotten the danger. Min-ho wasn't just a businessman. He was a crime boss with enemies who wouldn't hesitate to target his weakness. And she was absolutely his weakness. That night, she tried to talk to him about it. "Maybe we should be more careful, keep our relationship quiet." Min-ho looked at her like she'd suggested burning down his empire. "No." "But if you're enemies..." "Let them try." His voice was steel. "I have an army, I have resources. Anyone stupid enough to come after you will learn exactly why I'm called the Dragon." He pulled her close, his expression fierce. "You're not a secret, Susan. You're mine, and I want the whole world to know it. Even if it puts me in danger. I'll protect you, always." His conviction was absolute. "Nothing will touch you while I breathe." She wanted to believe him, but fear had taken root, growing with each passing day. The attack came on a Thursday. Susan was leaving the restaurant after her shift, tired but happy. Min-ho was supposed to pick her up, but he'd texted saying he'd be late, a business meeting running long. She'd decided to take the bus just this once. She never made it to the bus stop. A van screeched to a halt beside her. Doors flew open. Rough hands grabbed her, yanking her inside. Susan screamed, fought, her self-defense training useless against 3 large men. Something sharp pricked her arm. Darkness swallowed her whole. Min-ho knew something was wrong the moment Susan didn't answer her phone. She always answered. Always. By the 3rd unanswered call, he was moving, barking orders, mobilizing his entire organization. "Find her now." Yoon's face was grim. "Sir, there's been chatter, the Sang family." "I'll kill them all." The words were calm, factual. "Every single one." The Sang family ran the Southern Territories, a rival organization Min-ho had been slowly pushing out of Seoul. This was their retaliation. They'd taken his woman. His woman. Min-ho had built his reputation on cold calculation, on strategy over emotion. But as he tore through the city hunting for Susan, he became something else entirely, something primal and vicious and utterly unstoppable. He burned 3 of their warehouses, destroyed 2 operations, broke bones and extracted information with methodical brutality, and finally, as dawn broke over Seoul, he found the location. An abandoned factory in Incheon, 20 armed guards, and somewhere inside Susan. "Stand down," Yoon urged. "We need backup." "No time." Min-ho checked his gun, his expression carved from ice. "Anyone who gets between me and her dies. Pass it along." He walked through the front door like an avenging angel, and the screaming started. Susan woke to shouting and gunfire. Her head pounded, her vision blurry. She was tied to a chair in a grimy room, dried blood on her split lip. One of her captors had gotten rough when she'd refused to cry. The door burst open. A man stumbled in, bleeding. "He's here, Kang is here." Then Min-ho appeared in the doorway and Susan's breath stopped. He was covered in blood, none of it his own, his expression absolutely murderous, until he saw her. Then he transformed, rushed to her, gentle hands cupping her face. "Susan, baby, are you hurt?" "I'm okay," she managed. "Min-ho, you came. Did you think I wouldn't burn the world down to find you?" He cut her restraints with a knife, pulling her into his arms. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, this is my fault." "No, I should have protected you better." his voice broke. If they'd hurt you worse if I'd been too late. But you weren't, she clung to him, tears finally falling. You found me. He kissed her desperately, tasting her tears, trembling with relief and residual fury. We need to go, can you walk? She nodded. He helped her up, keeping her tucked against his side as they moved through the factory. Susan tried not to look at the bodies, the destruction Min-ho had wrought to reach her. Outside, his men waited with vehicles. Yoon's expression was carefully neutral as he took in his boss cradling Susan like she might disappear. The Sang family, Min-ho asked. Being handled, their leadership won't see tomorrow. Min-ho nodded. Good, let's go home. Back at the penthouse, Min-ho was impossibly gentle. He cleaned her wounds, wrapped her in soft blankets, held her while she shook with delayed shock. And when she finally fell asleep, he stayed awake, watching over her, his gun on the nightstand. He'd failed her, let his guard down, allowed enemies to get close enough to take what was his. The mistake wouldn't happen again. Susan woke hours later to find him still there, dark circles under his eyes. Did you sleep? Couldn't, his hand stroked her hair. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw you in that chair bleeding, his jaw clenched. I can't lose you, Susan, I can't. You won't. You don't know that. My world is dangerous. My enemies are ruthless. As long as you're with me, you're a target. He looked away. Maybe you should leave, go somewhere safe. I'll give you money, protection. Min-ho, she cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. No. You could have died. But I didn't, you saved me. She kissed him softly. I'm not leaving you, I love you. The words hung between them, huge and terrifying and undeniable. Min-ho stared at her like she'd performed a miracle. Say it again. I love you, Susan repeated, stronger now. I'm terrified, this is insane, but I love you and I'm choosing you, danger and all. He kissed her like a drowning man finding air, desperate and reverent. I love you. God, Susan, I love you so much it scares me. They held each other as Seoul woke outside, two broken pieces fitting together into something stronger than either could be alone. The next few weeks Min-ho was impossibly protective. Bodyguards followed Susan everywhere. His men vetted everyone she interacted with. He installed a security system that would make a paranoid dictator jealous. Susan tolerated it because she understood his fear, but she also refused to become a prisoner. I need to work, she said one morning. I can't just stay here forever. Why not? I'll take care of you. That's not the point. She took his hands. I need purpose, Min-ho. I need to feel like myself, not just your woman locked in a tower. He struggled with it, she could see, the urge to keep her safe warred with his desire to give her everything she wanted. Finally, he nodded. Okay, but with conditions. They compromised. She could work, but at a restaurant Min-ho owned with security nearby. She could see friends, but they were vetted first. She could have independence, but never at the cost of her safety. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. 3 months after the kidnapping, Susan came home to find Min-ho packing the penthouse, nervous in a way she'd never seen him. What's wrong? He turned to her and she saw fear in his eyes. Real, genuine fear. I need to ask you something. Her heart hammered. Okay. He crossed to her, taking her hands. These past few months have been the best of my life. You've made me believe in things I thought were impossible. Love, happiness, a future beyond violence and control. He took a shaky breath. I know my world is dangerous. I know I'm not easy to love. But Susan, I can't imagine my life without you in it. He dropped to one knee. Susan's hands flew to her mouth, tears already falling. In his palm was a ring, a stunning diamond that caught the light like captured fire. Marry me, Min-ho said. Be my wife. Let me spend the rest of my life protecting you, loving you, giving you everything you've ever dreamed of. Let me be yours completely and forever. Yes, she sobbed. Yes, yes, yes. He slipped the ring on her finger, then stood and kissed her, lifting her off her feet, spinning her around while she laughed and cried. And for the first time since they'd met, Susan saw him truly, completely happy. I love you, he murmured against her lips, my future wife. I love you too, my future husband. That night they celebrated with champagne and promises, with touches that felt like vows, with whispered plans for a future they'd build together. The wedding was small, Min-ho's inner circle and Susan's closest friends. She wore white silk that hugged her curves, her natural hair crowned with flowers. Min-ho wore a traditional suit, his eyes never leaving her as she walked down the aisle. When they exchanged vows, his voice shook. I promise to protect you, cherish you, and love you until my last breath. You are my home, Susan, my heart, everything I am is yours. Susan's vows were simpler but no less powerful. I promise to stand beside you, to love you through the darkness and light. You are my everything, Min-ho, today and always. When they kissed as husband and wife, applause erupted. But Susan barely heard it, lost in the moment, in him, in the impossible love that had changed everything. The reception was elegant chaos. Min-ho's men treated her like a queen, her friends wept happy tears, and through it all her husband never left her side, his hand possessively at her waist, his eyes full of wonder like he couldn't believe his luck. Happy, he murmured during their first dance. Deliriously, she rested her head on his chest, hearing his heartbeat. You. I never knew I could feel like this. He kissed her temple. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for finding me. They swayed together as Seoul glittered around them, two souls who'd found each other against all odds. 6 months later, Susan stood in their bathroom, staring at the positive pregnancy test in shaking hands. They talked about children, but someday, not now, not yet. Susan, Min-ho's voice carried from the bedroom. You okay? She opened the door, wordlessly showing him the test, watched his eyes widen, his expression cycling through shock, fear, then blazing joy. We're having a baby, his voice cracked. We're having a baby. He dropped to his knees, pressing his forehead to her still flat stomach. Hello in there, I'm your father, I'm going to love you so much, protect you, give you everything. He looked up at Susan, tears tracking down his face. Thank you for this gift. She ran her fingers through his hair, her own tears falling. We're really doing this. We're doing this, he stood, pulling her into his arms. A family, our family. That night, lying in bed with Min-ho's hand protective over her stomach, Susan marveled at how far they'd come. From a humiliating party invitation to this, a marriage, a baby, a love that had survived danger and doubt, and everything the world had thrown at them. I'm scared, she admitted quietly. Me too, he kissed her shoulder, but we'll figure it out together, we always do. Promise. Promise, his arms tightened around her. You, me, and now our baby. Nothing can touch us, Susan, not anymore. We're building something stronger than fear, more powerful than any enemy. We're building a family. 8 months later, Susan held their daughter, perfect and tiny and squalling with fury, while Min-ho hovered anxiously, afraid to touch something so fragile. She's beautiful, he breathed. She has your eyes. And your stubbornness, based on her volume. Susan laughed, then winced. Are you okay? Should I call the doctor? You need to rest. Min-ho, she caught his hand, pulling him closer. We're okay, all of us. He finally took their daughter, cradling her with infinite care, his expression transforming into something so tender it made Susan's heart ache. Hello, little one, I'm your Appa, and I promise you nothing will ever hurt you, not while I'm alive. The baby quieted, staring up at him with dark, unfocused eyes, and Susan watched her dangerous, powerful, ruthless husband fall completely, helplessly in love with someone new. What should we name her? She asked. Min-ho looked at Susan, then back at their daughter. Hope, because that's what your mother gave me when I had none. Hope, Susan repeated, testing it. Hope Kang, it's perfect. They sat together in the hospital room, a family born from impossible circumstances, a mafia wife's cruel invitation, a borrowed dress, and a connection that had defied every obstacle. Min-ho leaned over, kissing Susan softly. Thank you for walking into that party, for being brave enough to stay, for giving me everything I never knew I needed. Thank you for seeing me, Susan whispered back, for loving me exactly as I am. Baby Hope made a soft sound, and they both laughed, this new life they'd created already demanding attention. Outside, Seoul sparkled in the evening light. Inside, in that quiet room, Susan and Min-ho held their daughter and each other, building their future one moment at a time. The dragon of Gangnam had found his weakness, his greatest vulnerability, his most precious treasure. And he'd burn the world to ashes before he let anything threaten his family. But for now, in this perfect moment, there was only love, only peace, only the three of them together exactly as they were meant to be.